for ourselves. We do work with the federal government, and we've developed some government-specific graphical icons, sort of like Far Awesome. We call them love icons. They're open for anybody to use. Actually, have some sticker sheets in the back that have a couple of examples. It's govicons.io. I'd love to get feedback from any of you that are working with the government. If there are some other types of icons and graphics that you think might be useful, we'd love to hear about it so we can continue to grow out our set. We made one for cat cards. That was we started doing something for cat cards for representation of that. So that's one of the stickers we got back on our sheet. But please grab one and give us feedback.
Spy4 does lots of good work. They're the only people I know who've actually made a grid API about contracting. So that's something. Actually, sorry, they're the second group of people that I know who made that. All right, let's call another hand. Other announcements? See my notes? Okay, I have an announcement. One of our presenters tonight is an alumni of 18F, the team I am on and want to talk with. And she wrote if you will, and that is a place where you can sign up to present in the future. We're already full for April. We have some good ones, but May, June, etc. We need more presenters, and this is a great place to show off your work or talk about something that you're interested in. And then one more, yeah, Blue Mix. Raise your hand if you work with a company that's called IBM. Yeah, these people provided all the food that we're eating, so please give them a round of applause as well. They're actually the most recent of the sponsors that joined on to make this event possible. And again, it's a simple thing, but they got it their way to come here after hours and make possible our getting together. So thank you for Blue Mix. And there's more info actually. But do you want to just say what's on the piece of paper that you printed?
So it's great to see all our fellow API enthusiasts at the back. We've got a simple flyer with offer for a 30-day free trial for our platform. It's got a nifty QR code. A lot of us are mobile, but also the URL, my email, and the contact info of another gentleman. So go ahead, try it out, play with Watson, play with over 100 different APIs and services. Do something cool. And let us know what you think.
Is there an API for Watson?
There are several APIs.
Okay, well, there we go. That's all you get now. All right, we're going to get started. Justin, Jacob. Myself, yep. Okay. All right, so these gentlemen are from the General Services Administration. I happen to be biased towards them, so tough luck. They have made an API that's near and dear to my heart, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story.
All right, microphone check. All right, so we're going to have to go through slides pretty quickly on this. So you've seen this before. Rather than saying next slide, which is uncomfortable, if we see like hit me, or mercy, or something James Brown-esque, just do it and go to it. This is Jacob Kazil. I'm Justin Herman from the General Services Administration. Tonight we're here for you. Ladies and gentlemen, curl your toes right now, because it's going to make this all easier, because the rest of this presentation, that's where they'll be. We're going to talk to you today about the U.S. Digital Registry. Hit me. All right, quick question here. When we talk about engagement and how people interact with public services, how many third-party platforms do you think that government agencies use out there? Gray knows. Hold on. Does anybody have a guess? Because you think like Google, you think of Facebook, you think of GitHub. I'm sorry. I'm used to karaoke night where we have to eat the mic on that. All right. So rough question. Does anybody have an idea of how many different third-party sites are used by the United States government to engage with citizens?
20.
Over 80, almost 90 do we have negotiations of terms of service contracts for. Jacob Parcell, how many mobile apps do people use?
Okay, now you can hear me. So we only have about 300 right now. It's kind of sad.
300. The idea is that the citizen experience is not just going to a .gov or .mil website, and the success and performance of programs is not just measured by a web click. We must do more of this. Hit me. When we talk about these public services, when we talk about the word social media itself, for instance, what are we talking about here? It's not just telling the story, linking to blog posts, sending out press releases and things like that. This is federal student aid up here. This is Nicole, 24-year-old South Boston girl, loves the Boston Bruins. She put together a system that they can answer 150 questions an hour in 2 languages about federal student loans. You're able to then draw clear distinctions to say, measurably doing better at their services, which is getting people in touch with verified information on how to get federal student loans, and at reduced prices, both together here. Hit me. Also, because people rely more now on mobile apps and third-party platforms and not just government websites, there is a responsibility. There is an accountability level. This is a year ago when CENTCOM got hacked. ISIS graffitied the heck out of it, and then they post the private information of the families of US soldiers. You call it cyber vandalism sometimes because the idea is they say, well, when third-party sites get hacked, it's not like websites, it's more like graffiti on a wall. Tell me that when it's used like this, it's not just when you see it, when they graffiti. What about the times that people are able to take control of third-party sites and we don't know it yet? And they're waiting. We have to do better. There has to be a greater level of accountability, both publicly, and we must be able to demonstrate that. Hit me. So we're here to talk to you today about the United States Digital Registry. It has combined what was formerly the social media registry, which when we talk about social media, throw that word out the door. We're talking about third-party apps and sites. We're talking about GitHub. We're talking about Socrata. We're talking about not just what you would think of as like Twitter and Facebook. We're talking about any site you go into for the government that is not a .gov or .mil site. But what else is it, Jacob, on the mobile app
All
side?
your native apps and responsive web design websites.
Wow.
I don't need to say much.
So yeah, we set a goal that in this repository, United States Digital Registry, which is an API generating repository, that we would have 6,000 accounts by leap day. Instead, we actually blew through that. We're already past 7,000 accounts on our way to 10,000 official United States government third-party accounts. There are not many people who even realize that the United States government was using that many sites. That is part of the problem that we intend to fix. Because if people don't have an understanding that there's that much of a presence, how can we have accountability over it? Same with the mobile accounts, Jacob, right?
Yeah, I would like to have more mobile accounts personally, but we can talk about that in the future part of the presentation. Back to you, Justin.
Well, the thing is that pound for pound, let's be honest, not every government Twitter account is worth following. No, hold on. But if the Department of Veterans Affairs has a public health account that is only followed by 200 veterans, but they rely on that information. But Twitter and Facebook will only give a blue check mark and verify things based on popularity. I don't care if that only has 200 followers, because to those 200 veterans who rely on that information, that is the most important damn account that exists. That's the disparity that we face in the government in embracing emerging technologies that are not designed for us. Hit me. This is the back door itself. This is what you see. This is obviously not 90 accounts yet. We're going to start doing it, do it right, make sure that accounts, so we're downtown with a discount. You see this on the side. These are what we have. You're able to go in, define things by agency, by account type, by username. You're also then able to break down this API by language and a collaborative tagging infrastructure that allows for location, that allows for program level. There's 2 bureaucracies we're trying to smash. Everyone talks about smashing the government bureaucracy. When you're dealing with over 80 technology platforms, there's a bureaucracy to the technology itself. We want people to be able to go and using this API say, I want every public health information resource coming out of the United States government in the Spanish language in real time. And it doesn't matter what's agency, sub-agency, Twitter account, GitHub account, platform it is. You're able to see that how, when, where you want to have it. Hit me. So we're on our way now to blowing to 10,000 different accounts. Now, when I try to do this, so talk about, so these are 10,000 sparklers right here.
That's an important note, sparkle.
These are 10,000 sparklers. Because when we talk about 10,000, these are not static data fields. Every one of them are explosive, engaging. They tell the story. It's emergency management. It's things that save lives. It's things that connect people and allow them to have public education, allow them to have housing. Things, every single one of these sparklers represents something that plays an integral role in somebody's life. Hit me. Because this is 10,000 sparklers on fire.
He did this in his backyard, right? Backyard? Your backyard?
The roof of GSA. But that's the thing. When we talk about these numbers, big data, whatever, it's on fire. Hit me. So where's programmable web? Big support. Like we are learning how to do this better by talking to and reading and working with programmable web. Because I don't know this stuff, Gray. I mean, Gray helps me when he can, but we have to learn from you. And we sure to heck have learned a lot from programmable web, who have been an invaluable resource and called this the most important social media advancement of the government in 4 years. 4 years ago must have been a good day. I don't know what was going on. Kind of sketchy. I don't know what happened. Next. ChatCrunch, called biggest social media initiative ever. People don't know it. The United States government is probably the single largest employer of managers of third-party platforms, singularly in the entire world, in that sense. So, hit me. Harvard, which is nice when Harvard gets involved, called it an evolutionary step forward in open government. That's where the API comes in, because it's not just internal management. It's how we're demonstrating this, and we're opening things up for developers to use this API and do things that have never been done before. Hurt me and give it to Jacob.
All right, so why is mobile so low? Scott said that was a lot. I don't think 300 is a lot, Scott. It's
Not enough.
not enough. It's never enough. So one of the reasons I think mobile is so low is because agencies still haven't figured out how to do mobile. Hit me. Every agency, when they started doing mobile, which you saw about 5 years ago, was trying to build like Angry Birds. They were trying to create this super app. They were trying to get a movie deal with Jesse Eisenberg to star in it. And they failed. And a lot of these apps, hit me, wound up in the app graveyard and unused. So this is a real place. This is not just for government. This is also something the private sector has to deal with. When you create a mobile experience, it's not user-friendly, it's not intuitive, and is it something that people are doing on mobile? It's going to be a hashtag fail. So what we really need, instead of Angry Birds, Gray, hit me, is piping plotters. So to what Justin just described, the 200 veterans that find that one social media account important, there might be 200 people who would use a native app that would find that transformative for what they do. The piping plotter app is something that USGS, U.S. Geological Survey, developed for folks who are working on the coast, tracking the migratory habits of the piping plotter. So instead of trying to do this big app for everybody, they did a very focused mobile moment for these users who could not have collected this data before, would have it done it by hand, have it written down. We've seen in multiple native apps. You can look at a couple. There's an app in the federal government that collects magnetic field readings of your phone and then uses that, and they created a geospatial reading of what the it's techie, but the magnetometers record magnetic fields, and they've taken the data from the thousands of users from that app and have actually created a model geospatial data of how the magnetic fields in the earth. And so these are the sort of things that government needs to do, very focused things. Even the folks doing responsive web design, they're trying to shoehorn their website into a mobile device and not really thinking about that mobile user. So we can do better than 300, and we can also do better than those apps. Back to you, Justin, to take it to the bridge.
May I live another 100 years and never be on a panel where we talk about the potential of tomorrow what we damn well should be delivering today. We are not going to just talk about the future. This is somebody right now. Where's ICF International? People are building off the API right now, and we are getting ready to show ideas and programs that are tangible examples of the next generation services in which we speak of. Mercy. Day one, we started getting feedback from companies, from programmable. Actually, when we woke up, before I even woke up the next morning, programmable web had already sent things. We found problems with the API. That day we fixed it. So it's not just one of these lessons where we talk about government engaging and how can we actually do this. We're only here today because of the participation of people like Programmable Web and ICF. Where's Carrie?
She's hiding.
Carrie right there
Yeah.
has been integral to our team, by the way. So everyone just pour her a wine after this. Perfect. So what are we talking about right now? What are things that we are already working on the solution for? Now imagine using this, a shared public records management and archive of every single public engagement coming out of every agency on every platform in one stop that then you can hunt by topic, by language, by location, however you want it using that API. What about how many people know analyticsusa.gov? Imagine one for all public engagement from every agency and every account that there is, not web clicks, but the engagement, the responses, the responsiveness itself of government. Also talking about emergency management platforms. Even today, we met with Slack. You love Slack, get ready for some smart bots that you'll be able to subscribe to based on specific public services. Mercy. What's going to be happening in the next couple months? We didn't want to just tell you about the potential. We wanted to show you. The original idea was to take the Red Cross's Social Command and Control Center that is based on different data feeds, and instead of having it at a physical location, have it on the dashboard of a Tesla automobile that we at a conference would pull the sheet off the top of and reveal like the beast caged in the heart of a city and its potential. We have expanded from there though. There are many things that you're going to see very soon, but we are going to unlock the potential of that beast. And so we call it Project King Kong.
It's Project Calm. It's Project Calm.
Thank you so much for hearing this. Anybody here wants to talk about how you can be part of the future, asks us, because we need you.
Yeah. So while the next people are coming up, Jay, so though they never say API as much as I want them to, if you just Google digital registry API, there's a lot of things here. Actually, some of the things people use it for, it's one of the easiest to use APIs of agencies and federal government.
Thanks to Programmable Web and people in this audience.
But you can do really, really powerful things because, of course, every one of these services has their own API. If you go to govcode.org, you'll start to see, for instance, what it looks like when you mash up all of the GitHub activity of all of government. There's a lot more there. Anyway, I will stop waxing about government APIs, though I love to do it. And go ahead and hand over to Jay from Mulesoft. Wired you up for you. Also do HTML if you want. All right. Part two. This is going to totally work. You're going to like this. All right. If you raised your hand before, because you've been to an odd number of these, including one. All right. Raise them again. This is totally going to work. All right. Put your hand down if you don't actually care about Python. That's okay. It's totally fine. Yeah. Yes, having a Python, sure, you raise your hand higher. But it's totally fair if Like, shouldn't be a contestant. All right, cool. All right, now hands down again. That's phase 2. By the end of the night, this is gonna blow everybody's mind. It's like,
Did you say there was only 3?
yes. All right.
I like that whole hit me thing.
It works.
Yeah. That's a tough act to follow there, Justin. All right, so my name's Jay Fielding. I'm from Mulesoft, and I'm a solutions consultant. So I get to work with, I get the pleasure to work with a lot of federal agencies and help them build great APIs. And so what I want to talk to you tonight about is the latest chapter and how we are building great APIs with RAML. And just a quick show of hands, who's heard of RAML before? All right, about half the room. Cool. All right, so RAML stands for RESTful API Modeling Language. And 3 years ago, we released this spec. It's a design specification. We released it publicly, and we worked with lots of other folks, and we have a whole working group that's dedicated to the advancement of this spec. And it was released 3 years ago as a 0.8 specification. And just a few months ago, we finally released the 1.0 spec. So for those who have released public projects, it's not always a given that you're going to make it to 1.0 spec. Thankfully, we've had lots of community adoption, and we've incorporated that feedback. So my talk tonight is what's new? How are we advancing this specification? And it's a little techy, but bear with me. You'll see kind of why we're making these advancements. So we introduced data models. Well, one of the great things about RAML is you can define examples and schemas. So you can do things like mock up your API just from the design. You can do things like automated testing. So this helps you quickly design and solicit feedback for your APIs just at the design phase. So you don't have to do the hard work of implementing the API before you get feedback. And what's new about our data models is this thing over here on the right-hand side. And what that looks like is a very concise way to represent data. On the left-hand side is JSON, which is also a concise way to represent data, but you can tell it's already twice as long. And if you want to represent that same data model in XML, you can do that as well. So you can have a consistent data model that you can express in multiple data formats. Here's another way we can leverage data models. We can include them as part of libraries. We can even namespace them. So you can have different namespaces with your data models. What else did we include? Well, besides data models, you can include traits, resources, and you can bundle those all together as libraries. So one of the great things about RAML is it promotes reuse. So if somebody has created a great library around an API specification, like 18F does, and says, okay, well, here's a set of standards that we recommend all government agencies follow. Well, they can quickly incorporate this library into the APIs that they build to incorporate those best practices. One of the other things we introduced in RAML 1.0 is overlays. So you can have on the left-hand side is your standard API design, and you can have an overlay for production, for development. So you can change the way your API design looks based on the environment you're deploying to. Annotations. So this is something we borrowed from one of the other API specifications out there in Swagger. They had built extensions to their framework. We've allowed you to do that as well. You really can't read that, but line 4 and 5 allows you to put in an extension for the Amazon API gateway. So you can put something proprietary, basically extend the API specification for a specific solution like Amazon's API gateway. And there's a lot more, but I just wanted to hit the high points of what we've changed from 0.8 to 1.0. Some of the other things that were released with 1.0 is a workbench. So this is based on the Atom project, which is released by GitHub. GitHub itself has published a development environment, and we leverage that environment and basically put a wrapper around it specific for building RAML API or RAML designs. In this workbench, you can do things like testing. You can really discover how your API can be used. You can do those overlays and express the data in multiple formats. So along with the brand new release, we also updated the raml.org website. So this is what it looks like today. It's you can see, highlight some of the customers that have adopted this. A lot of enterprises need a contract-based API, so they have adopted Raml. You can see some sites like Spotify have adopted it as well. Cisco is a big proponent. They're also in the working group. We've seen some of those companies like Spotify, like FCC, like Quicken Loans, build projects around the API, the Raml specification. And those are listed, they're basically published on GitHub and listed in a repository on the Raml website. So you can search for things like automated testing, mock-up services. All those are listed here, and also API specifications to different languages, like JavaScript, like .NET, or Node.js. So, and then another thing is these projects have been viewed a lot. So if you're interested in working with Raml, make sure it gets included in this registry because you get lots of eyeballs. And that's all I have. If you want to learn more information, go to raml.org or the APIworkbench.com. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to tell you, Jeff.
The third one.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's my turn. I'm going to say that there for later. This is much more important. Okay. Raise your hand if you had your hand raised before earlier and set into an odd number and actually have an interest in Python. Okay. Hold your hands high. This is important. It is 2 months into the year. Ready? Keep your hand raised if, so far this year, you've had a solid opportunity to help somebody who's new with GitHub to use GitHub. If you haven't, it's okay if you haven't, but no, it's fine. I know. That's right. All right, good. We're down to 4. All right, this is gonna be intense. If people have ideas about what the 4 criteria should be, you can put your hands up. No problem here. It's totally gonna work. I'm going to give a long expository introduction to Laura. Laura Gerhardt is one of my colleagues. We first met a few months ago. But more than anything I could say, I think the esteemed words of the Twitter CIO ebooks is a better explanation for it. She was recently called a visionary senior executive and digital business thought leader. It's true. Check out CIO ebooks on twitter.com. All right, so. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, okay.
All right. So I'm Laura Gerhardt. As Gray mentioned, I'm esteemed as according to CIO eBooks, which is actually a bot. Today, and I'm with 18F, but today I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about a project I work with the San Francisco Data Office, and a case study about their housing inspection data, in particular, how to get that as an open data strategy so be prepared for API, and entitled Unleashing the Krakens. So what are these Krakens? In this particular case, it was municipal data across 3 different departments, which was in particularly ill-suited databases that were not interoperable, that had been established at least 20 years ago, and for instance, one of the ERDs I was looking on had to be this big in order for me to even read the tables and fields to even get an understanding of what was in the database, of which is a small transactional, there was a lot of legacy data, et cetera, not necessarily useful for what would be in an API or what would be relevant to a civic hacking community. And to give you another sense of the sort of how messy these Krakens were, in what was supposedly a categorical field of about 300 different sort of violation categories, there was over 40,000 unique values. So that's not categorical. And so how do you deal with these Krakens? You need a data plumber. And this data plumber concept, this actually comes from David Guarino, who's a Code for America alum, and came up with the concept ETL for America. Sunlight has talked about it, as well as others. The notion that as much as a lot of the civic engagement and hacking community is focused on sort of building new platforms, there's an underlying data layer that is really hard to extract at this point, and in sort of messy legacy systems, the Krakens, that sort of the data plumbers can head out. But an ETL, for those of you who don't know, is extract, transform, or load. It's basically sort of a data management platform or idea concept to get your data from a database into sort of a usable format. And in a lot of cases, building a web stack is actually a completely different set of skills than sort of data science skills or data management skills that a lot of, say, this sort of 18FE Code for America sort of cohort tends to represent. And in some senses, also that community is also the sort of potential data consumers for a municipal data, open data strategy is not necessarily as accustomed to using that sort of data or accessing that data, and is more used to using predictable endpoints with an API. And so if you were just to throw up a lot of these disparate data sets that describe a similar process, in this case, say, the housing inspection process, which was, again, used by 3 different departments, fire, building inspection, and public health, it might not be the best course of action to just throw them up. And I want to take a second to sort of talk back what you get from sort of an API-first strategy, which is to sort of work back how it can be troublesome for dealing with Krakens. Oops, I don't have my notes. So in an API-first setup, you've got typically consistent metadata, which sort of gets you to predictable endpoints. And then as part of that, in your API interaction, you've got sort of parameters for filtering different things. So that sort of can help regulate data entry. And then also, sort of modern, especially RESTful API is going to also be version control. So as you interwork with sort of your data consumers, they can sort of give you feedback to help iterate when your data model is not necessarily ideal and help you with that process. But so what if your API was the last thing on your database designer's mind? It's an interesting and that you've now got a database that you'd like to expose the data to via API, but it's sort of in a Kraken-like format that is really hardly accessible. And there might be a specific login and API for it, but it's not really in sort of RESTful API format to begin with. So I want to talk about like what would be sort of high-level strategy in order to get that data toward an API-ready strategy. So the first would be to establish sort of a data standard or a data model over actually recoding that individual data. And I think this is helpful in terms of thinking it'll help you give predictable endpoints for your data consumers. And so that they'll be able to, especially as you have sort of these disparate data sets. And especially sort of, this is thinking from sort of the municipal standpoint, there are a lot of taxonomical associations that you sort of with access to a municipal sort of actual communicating with the sort of data producers have that an end data user is not going to have. For instance, in sort of the housing inspection data, one particular department was using violations to mean a whole caseload of violations from, say, sort of fire hazards, to my favorite was excess lint, which is kind of lame as a laundry room gone awry. And whereas another department defined violations as the individual infraction. So if you were to just put your data up, it would sort of look disproportionate in terms of, well, this one department has a ton of violations where the other, but if you were maybe to sort of look at it at the case level and sort of do that data grooming from a standardized data model, you'd get a little bit more consistency from both the data producers as well as the data consumers. So similarly, I would say that as part of that, you're not going to necessarily know what your data consumers are going to be looking at. So I would advocate for opening the data as soon as you can and iterating. For instance, like I was sort of promoting a data standard that was actually used for the internal departments so that they could sort of improve their performance metrics, given that the internal data structure was sort of around case management, but there were ways to tweak the model in order to sort of improve department performance. But that might not be what your sort of API consumer community wants. And so you're not going to know that unless you open it up. And as part of that, looking for the partner that is going to be most receptive to moving their data and also what data is closest to the standard we're working with. So the next one, the sort of exception to the data model before recoding is address data. Most of your community probably is not going to take the time to do the geofencing, or pay for a paid model API, or deal with the rate limits. I personally have a lot of timeout issues with, say, Data Science Toolkit, which is otherwise a great API for geocoding. So I would say this is the exception. If to the extent you can standardize your address data, and in particular, San Francisco had moved to an enterprise address system to sort of consistently go across, but not all of their department data, especially that historical data, had even gone that way. And then so the final sort of like high-level recommendation I would say is, again, your biggest, more than anyone, your stakeholder is the data producer themselves. And because a lot of this, especially in a municipal setting, where there's an active city council, say in San Francisco, you've got a lot of people who are sort of hesitant to open up their data in particular. So in part, that was my motivation for proposing a data model that was sort of advocating performance, so it could help improve the department's work themselves. But also there's a lot of things you, as sort of a data facilitator, can help do to encourage them to open up that data. This could be categorical mapping exercises with, say, that categorization that you would only really need really good natural language processing to get before. Or encourage, if you can't get to that, encourage at least template languaging text if you don't have access to manipulating the actual database from sort of a free text input field to sort of a categorical field. And again, if there is an API that links maybe sort of in a cumbersome way to the database, consider building a lightweight web form so that their data entry becomes more standardized. And in the case of housing inspections, mobile entry was key too, because they're actually going to these physical properties, and then the point of entry should be while they're still in the property instead of back in their office. And so to the extent that you can help them, it will sort of make going forward the data cleaner, and then you can help with your community, the sort of civic hacking community, help work to recode the data. So with all these things, hopefully you can help tame a little bit of these krakens into cute little octocats that are a little bit more friendly. Thank you.